What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and in today's episode we are going to be going over subtitles in our fighting game tutorial series. If we come into our game, pick the mutant for both characters in this case, and load into a level, we come into our stage intro, and once the stage intro is done or we skip it, we go to our character entrances. Character entrances here can say whatever we want them to say. So in this case, it's just the mutants doing this battle cry, making the subtitles just say roar, but of course you could say whatever you want. And so when dialogue appears in our game, we want to display subtitles. Now, subtitles are a built-in feature of Unreal Engine, but their subtitle system doesn't necessarily do everything you want it to do. For that reason, we are going to make our own subtitle system. For the first part of subtitles here, what we're going to be doing is determining when there's dialogue, then creating a widget with some customizable parameters such as the text and the background. So if we want a background for our subtitles. Now you'll notice that the subtitle hasn't gone away, and it should have. We don't have a real method to do this. We could hide it after a period of time, but all of our sound effects right now are using PlaySound2D. PlaySound2D is a fire and forget. So this episode is also going to go over the benefits of using CreateSound2D and why PlaySound2D that we have in the series needs to be updated in some locations. That way we can actually know when a sound effect or piece of dialogue has finished. Those are the things we're going to be going over in today's episode. If you're interested in getting caught up in the series before you check out this episode, you can see how we've done things from attacks, hitboxes, throws, commands, all that fun stuff. I'll link you to the playlist right here in the top right corner. If you only care about these subtitles, that's perfectly fine. Of course, you don't have to watch the entire fighting game tutorial series to do that. I would recommend that you watch this episode right here, which is where we went over our character HUD. Not required, but a nice thing to go over and familiarize yourself with. With all that out of the way, we can go ahead and get started. So the first thing we want to do is just create our widget for our subtitles. That way we can spawn it and then we'll play around with it. So this is a code and blueprint tutorial series. Pretty much everything is going to be done in the blueprints today because we're going to be creating the widget in the blueprints, and then I'm just going to be calling it in the blueprints as well, but that's just temporary. We're just doing that for a quick test right now. When I go over the CreateSound2D stuff that I mentioned earlier in this episode, you'll see that we really should be able to do this from anywhere. But for now, everything's going to be in the blueprints. So we're going to go to where we want to make this widget for our subtitles, and that's in my blueprints, widgets, menus. Wherever you put it is fine though, so I'm in menus and I have my subtitles element. Now to make this, we need to make a new widget. To do this, you're going to go to Add, User Interface, Widget Blueprint. If you're in Unreal Engine 4, that would have been enough to create it, but if you're in Unreal Engine 5 like we are here, you have to pick the parent class, and I'm just going to keep the regular default user widget class here. So once I select this, you'll get a new widget, and you have to name it whatever you want. I called it subtitles element. It's not really the subtitles as a whole. It's one piece of text we have, so you could just call it subtitles, but I just wanted to make sure it was clear it was an individual element. So subtitles element for me. Once you create this, go into it. At this point, you can structure this widget however you want it to look. So customize your subtitles to your liking. For me, I have my regular canvas panel since I have everything in this series resizing as the window resizes. I can simply just add a canvas panel here and do the same thing, and the subtitles will always be in the proper spot. That's why I like to do it that way. If you're in Unreal Engine 4, you will get a canvas panel by default, but if you're in Unreal Engine 5, you can add one simply by searching for canvas panel, and then just bringing it onto your widget. This first one here is completely default. I haven't changed anything about it. This is your regular canvas panel. But I did add another canvas panel as a child of that as well. So drag another canvas panel into this canvas panel, and this is going to be the actual subtitle section. This is going to be the canvas for the background, actual text, and any other things that you want to put in your canvas panel. So I named this one Subtitle Canvas, and I positioned it at the anchor of the bottom full width right here. So I know I want it to go the whole way across the width of the screen, but I also gave it some position updates because if I don't and it stays at 0, it's going to be all the way down here, which isn't what I want. I do want it to be a little bit above the bottom of the screen, so I just gave it a position Y of -200. Again, completely up to you. Of course, also worth noting that you don't need to do the full width. You could do the standard bottom center like this and then change your size to be whatever, 800. Or you could even size it to content so that the background was only on the words themselves. It really is up to you. But I'm going to reset this back here to how I had it, just because we haven't done a widget like this, and it could be useful if you're trying to do something similar. So anyway, I put my size Y as 60 because I wanted it to be a little bit bigger than the default value here. It starts out as 30 when you make a new canvas panel as a child, but doubled that just to give it a little bit of room above the text. And nothing else in here has to change, but of course change it if you want it. Now I just added a text element to that second canvas panel here, and I called this one Subtitle Text. For the anchor on this one, I did anchor it to the full middle this time. So the reason for this is because I want it to be centered here, but I also want it to be the full width so that we could allow text to go the whole way. I also gave offsets of 20 for the left and right. You can see here that the text does not go the whole way of the canvas. That's because of these offsets. If I make these 0, you'll see that they do go the whole way. I did not want text going to the very end of the screen, so I thought here was a good spot. I made the size Y60 because I did want it to be the whole height of the canvas panel, because again I like that size and I wanted to match the canvas panel while keeping it centered. I made it size to content though, because if you don't do size to content, it is going to take up that whole canvas panel, and that's fine, but your text actually won't be centered. So basically size to content here is making it vertically aligned with the canvas and the background. And I gave it a Z order of 1 because I wanted it to appear in front of the background. For the text, you can put whatever you want. So in my case, I wasn't sure if I wanted to do character colon, as if they're the ones speaking, and then their dialogue like I have in this example here, or just the plain dialogue. They're both pretty easy to do, so it's not a big deal to change this later. Right now we just have one dialogue box that's handling all the text. So I wrote it out like this. Here are my font settings. You don't really have to copy any of these. These are just my personal preferences. So I have my outline size at 2, regular size at 24. I do have the justification as the middle. If you change this, you can make it left aligned or right aligned. Middle is what I wanted, so as this text grows, it will stay centered in this area. And that's everything for the text. Make sure that you do make it a variable because we are going to need it in the graph. Now I've added an image as well to that canvas panel, and I've called this one Subtitle Background. We want to make this one a variable as well because I'm going to allow us to hide this background if we want. Additionally, you could change the color of it or the opacity of it, as some games allow you to do. So we have a few reasons you might want to have that as a variable. Anchor, same deal. I have it as the full. So this full means it's going to take up the entire space of the parent element, which is our subtitle canvas. And so by selecting this, you can see that it has taken up the entire space of the canvas. Then I gave it a color of 0, 0, 0, and 0.5. Basically, it's black at half alpha or half transparent. Everything else in here is default. And there we go. So this is our subtitles element widget. We now want to go into the graph. The graph is very simple on this widget. I only have event construct, and I'm just going to be setting the text to display and the visibility of the background for today's episode. So I'm going to make two variables, plus variable. First one is going to be text to display. This is the actual text in the subtitles. I made it of text type right here. And I made it instance editable and expose on spawn so that when we're creating this widget, we can pass in this data and we'll have it right away ready for event construct. The other variable that I have is the background visibility. Background visibility is a type of slate visibility. So enum slate visibility. This is also instance editable and expose on spawn. Again, when we create the widget, we can pass this data along right away so that in event construct we can use it. Default values for text to display and background visibility are fine as their standards, which are an empty text and visible. Now we go to event construct, which you should have in your widget, but if you don't, you can search for event construct. And we just want to use our text to display to set the text on our subtitle text variable. So this subtitle text variable is our text on our widget, and we can call it set text, in parentheses, text on it, and pass in our text to display parameter. Then we can grab our subtitle background, which is our image on our widget, and call set visibility, and we want the widget one. and we can pass in our background visibility. And this is our event construct. At this point, what we need to do is find a way to spawn this widget. Now, what I'm going to be adding isn't necessarily final. There's a lot of ways we could do this, and there's a lot of places we're going to want to be able to do this from. I'm going to use the existing function library because it's easy for today's episode. So I have this blueprint class called base function library, and I added a new function to it today called add subtitles. So add subtitles is basically a function we can call from anywhere that's going to create a subtitles element widget and add it to the viewport. We can also pass in the appropriate information. So once you make this function, you can go over to the input parameters and add two input parameters. The first one is going to be our subtitle text. It's going to be of type text. The other one is our background visibility, which is going to be of type eSlate visibility. It's very simple. And then in here we can call create widget and select our subtitles element class. You'll get this node here, and then we can drag off the return value and type add to viewport. And we want to pass in the subtitle text to the text to display and the background visibility to the background visibility. And that's how we get this here. If you're not familiar with base function libraries, I can show you how to add one. This is one we had in the series. But you can go to wherever you want to create this. For me, I went to a folder called functional BPs, and then I went to add, blueprint function library. Now we have to determine where we want to call that function we just made, and I'm just going to do it in our animation blueprint where our start entrance sequence event is. Again, this is temporary. Yes, we do want to have subtitles for that section, but we're going to do it in a more robust way. Right now, let's just make sure we can get them appearing on the screen. So I'm going into my mutant anim BP, and I have this event start entrance sequence. This is where I play the entrance sequence, so I actually do the camera effect, then I hide the HUD at this point and play the roar from the mutant. After this point, I'm just calling add subtitles. And then I can pass in my manual text that I want. You could read it in from a file and do localization stuff with it. You have a lot of options here, but right now I'm just typing it in manually. Then for background visibility, I'm leaving it as visible, but I will show you what it looks like when we hide it as well. So this is simple and it works. However, what I mentioned earlier about PlaySound2D is something we need to address in the following episode. So PlaySound2D is a fire and forget sound effects system. What happens here is we play the sound effect and then we don't track any of the data about it. So it keeps playing regardless of what happens, including pausing the game. We don't really know when that dialogue is done, and for that reason, we can't actually remove the dialogue at a proper time. We could add a timer by event or even a delay and then remove the subtitle widget after that, but if we do that, there's no guarantee that we'll do it at the right time. We could do it too early, too late, or we'd have to customize it for every line of dialogue. None of those are ideal, but what we can do is create a Sound2D. We have this custom PlaySound2D, which calls PlaySound2D, but there's also create Sound2D. This allows us to actually keep track of the sound that's created and determine when it's finished, among many other things. When it is finished, we can then remove the subtitles. Now, I could do this right here and now, but we have a lot of sound effects in our game that are going to use Create Sound2D. I'd say as a general rule of thumb, any menu sounds, UI sounds, things like that, they're going to be PlaySound2D, but any sounds that we want to actually potentially stop in the middle, like dialogue or entrance sequences, say we pause the game, we want to pause that sound effect and know when it ends as well so we can change the subtitles. So we're going to have a full episode on using Create Sound2D and all the instances we need in our fighter, and then at that point we can have another episode on subtitles to make them appear and work as they actually should. Let's also test and make sure that our visibility is working for our background. So say I don't want a background on my subtitle, I just go ahead and set that to hidden and play the game. This will likely be a configuration or settings option, not something you would be changing per subtitle. We'll grab that data from somewhere, but you can see here there is no background now. It just says roar in the bottom middle of the screen, and now we're good to go. So anyway, guys, that's all I got. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please subscribe. It does more for myself and the channel than anything else you can do, and I really appreciate that. You can get extra benefits by checking out the Patreon, YouTube membership, and Discord subscriptions. There's a lot of kind souls that already have done that, and I really, really appreciate all your support. Thank you guys so much. If you had any trouble while watching this episode or any of my episodes, feel free to join the Discord community. There is a link in the description, and I would be happy to help you. Otherwise, guys, that's all I got, so thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.